I love recipes that are simple and quick to prepare, full of flavor, and require minimal cleanup afterwards. One pot or one pan meals are all the rage these days for those exact reasons, and today I'm excited to share with you 3 of my current favorites. We eat a lot of fish, not only because it's good for us, but we actually love it. So I'm always looking for new ways to prepare it. And this one pan salmon meal is a real winner. So we're gonna start by getting some vegetables ready. And we're gonna give them a kickstart here on the stovetop and then transfer it to the oven. You can make this dish entirely in the oven if you prefer. You could probably even do it entirely on the stovetop if you want. So first up, we're going to start with some potatoes. I love these little baby potatoes. I find that the flavor's really good on them. It's easy to figure out how much you need per person, and we're going to quarter them so that they're going to cook a little bit more quickly. You could absolutely use larger potatoes. If they have a coarse skin, you'd probably want to peel them, but I love being able to eat potatoes with the peels on. And I'm just looking at the amount here. We're doing a 1-person portion, so I think that's probably going to be good. And now we're going to heat up our pan and add a little bit of olive oil. You can use your preferred oil of choice if you're a fan of canola, vegetable, avocado. You want to put in enough to coat the potatoes well, but not too much. And that was something that I learned recently. We think that, oh, well, deep frying makes things crispy. But in fact, too much oil can make your dish turn out soggy. So not too much oil. So I'm just going to spread this around, and I want the pan to heat up enough to let the potatoes start to sizzle as soon as they meet that hot oil. So I'm just going to put those aside. We're also going to cook some onion at the same time. Of course, I love the combination of potatoes and onions, and it goes really, really well with the fish. So you want to cut them into moderate-sized pieces. One rule of thumb when you're doing a medley of vegetables is to think about things in a similar size so that they will cook evenly and they also look really nice on the plate. There we go. Okay, we've got some heat going on here, and a little bit more. And I'm going to add the potatoes now. So they should start sizzling momentarily. We'll give them a head start before we add the onions. Getting some good sizzle, and I hope you noticed when I put the onions in the pan just now, I didn't scrape them with the sharp part of my blade. That dulls your knives, so you want to flip them over and use it as a pusher that way. I can already smell the onions, and they're sizzling nicely. So we're just going to give them enough time to brown up a little bit, and then we'll be putting that in the oven. So we're going to add other vegetables once the potatoes have had their head start, and we'll start with asparagus, and I feel so lucky that we can get asparagus at any time of the year now. It used to be just sort of a spring and early summer delight. For one person, about 8 asparagus spears or so is a good serving. Here we go. Give the potatoes a little stir. Okay, I think that's ready to go, so I'm going to transfer this to the oven, and then we'll come back and finish preparing the rest of our vegetables. All right, so I mentioned you want the vegetables to be in sort of a uniform size so that the dish looks nice, it's easy to eat, and it cooks evenly. So we're going to cut the asparagus into segments about, I would say, like the length of my thumb, so about 2 inches. And we'll just put them here in this bowl, and they'll be ready to add once the potatoes have their head start. And we'll drizzle just a little bit more oil on there. Again, not too much. The oil does help to insulate the vegetables so that they don't dry out as they're cooking. Plus it adds nice flavor. Just give those a little toss. There we go. And this is a really flexible dish. You could use it as a kind of a clean out the vegetable crisper if you want. I've added mushrooms, zucchini, snow peas, peppers, lots of different things. They're all fantastic with it, but I'm going to keep it simple this time. We'll have our potatoes and onions, our asparagus, and then I'm going to add cherry tomatoes. It'll be a nice texture counterpoint and also color, not to mention flavor. So we'll just quickly have these. And again, a tiny drizzle of olive oil on those. It doesn't look like a lot, but remember we're making a one-person portion, and that's something that I really like about this recipe. It's something I can make for myself for a hearty lunch if I've got a really busy afternoon. And we're also going to add some balsamic vinegar. And my advice when it comes to balsamic is buy the good stuff. It really makes a difference. You'll enjoy using it a lot more, and a bottle can last a really long time. And a little salt and pepper for the tomatoes. There we go. So once our potatoes are ready, we'll get the pan out of the oven and we'll add in the remaining vegetables. All right, we've got our vegetables out of the oven. They're coming along beautifully. The onions are crisping up. I can see the potatoes are getting brown. So now we're going to add in the rest of our veg. So we've got our prepared asparagus, and I'm just going to scrape it out to make sure we get some of the olive oil. Then we'll add our cherry tomatoes. And just kind of want to stir it around so everything is snuggled down into the pan. And make sure you break apart the cherry tomato pieces. And last but not least, we're going to add in our salmon. So I'm going to just pop it in the pan, and again kind of tuck it down in the veg. And we're going to give it a little drizzle of olive oil again so it doesn't dry out while it's cooking. And this salmon is skin off, which I like for this dish. You could absolutely cook it skin on and just remove it when you are serving it. And finally, a little bit of salt and pepper for the salmon. It has such great flavor, it doesn't need anything more than that. And then we're going to pop it back into the oven. Salmon of this size will probably take about 8 to 10 minutes, and we're going to measure the temperature with an instant read thermometer because we don't want to over or undercook it. So stay tuned on the salmon. All right, we've got our salmon out of the oven. I'm just going to check the temperature here. And our target, as I may have mentioned before, is 145 Fahrenheit. Perfect. All right. And I did measure in the thickest part, so you'll want to make sure you do that as well. So now we're just going to get our garnishes ready. I really love fresh lemon with fish of all kinds, but it's also delicious even on chicken dishes and so on. So highly recommend you add that to your repertoire. And a few fresh chives. Fresh herbs really perk up the finished flavor of a dish. They look pretty, and again, the lemon and the chives are just going to wake up the palate to get ready for the incoming deliciousness. Okay. So we'll plate it in this pretty little bowl here. We'll start by getting the vegetables out. And you can see it's a lot of vegetables for one person. I often will roast up extra, and then I have that sometimes to add to an omelet or just for a little snack. And bowls are great for serving because they retain the heat of the dish. It's not going to dissipate out over the surface of a plate. So I use bowls quite often. Okay, I think that's a good amount of veg. Maybe a couple more bits of asparagus. And then we'll put the salmon on top. Now we'll add our chives. Lemon. And our one pot roasted salmon and vegetables is ready to go.
I used to think it took a lot of time and effort to make creamy, flavorful risotto, requiring careful attention and almost constant stirring on a stovetop. I've got great news. There's a much easier way, and I'm about to show it to you.
Did you know that the best way to store tomatoes is upside down? The stem end is where moisture leaves the tomato and air gets in. So to keep them from spoiling, turn them upside down. And if anyone ever tells you not to put them in the fridge, studies have shown there's no impact to flavor, texture, or juiciness, so go ahead. All right, I'm really excited to show you how easy it is to make risotto in the oven, and of course, one pot. So I started things off by cooking up some diced bacon, and I've reserved the bacon fat in the pan, and we're going to saute the rice and some onions in that. If you prefer to make this a vegetarian dish, obviously you can omit the bacon and just use your oil of choice, and you could consider maybe using some coconut bacon as a garnish at the end if you like. So we're going to start by getting our bacon fat reheated. And I'm going to chop some onion to add to it. Most risottos include onion, and it just adds a really nice hit of flavor to the rice, which is pretty neutral on its own. You could use a whole small onion. In this case, I've got half of a larger one. And just kind of a fine dice here, but not microscopic sized. Now we're going to add that to the pan. Along with our arborio rice, and you really want to use this kind of rice for risotto. It cooks up perfectly, and you don't rinse it because you want the starch in your dish. So we'll just give this a little stir, and the point of this step is to coat the rice with the fat that you're using, whether it's olive oil, avocado, coconut, bacon fat, whatever, and also to toast it a little bit, and it gives the onions a head start before you add the liquid so that they're starting to cook and caramelize a little bit. All right, so now our rice is toasty and the onions, I can smell them, they're cooking nicely. So we're going to add in some chicken stock. You could use vegetable stock if you prefer. And we need about 3.5 cups for this quantity of rice. All right, that should be good. And we'll give this a little stir. And then we're going to transfer the pot into the preheated oven, and it'll cook for about 20 minutes. And unlike traditional risotto where you have to keep stirring and stirring and stirring, in this Dutch oven, it just does its thing and you don't have to fuss with it. So into the oven we go. All right, we've taken the risotto out of the oven. Let's take a look. Oh, look at that. Looks so good. I have to remember that the pot's really, really hot. Sometimes I forget when it's a stovetop operation with something that's been in the oven. So now we're going to add in the rest of the deliciousness. White wine is a classic element of risotto, and you have two choices. You can add it in when you're toasting the rice earlier, or if you want the flavor to be a little bit more pronounced, you can add it in when it's about 7/8 of the way cooked. And any dry white wine. If you prefer to not use wine, you can also use a mixture of water and a little bit of cider vinegar. So that just gives it a nice little pop of flavor. So we're going to stir this in. And I will remember, as I said, that the pot is very hot. And the texture is just what we want. Risotto should always be served a little tiny bit on the soupy side. You don't want it dry like a rice pilaf or something. And I can see that the grains are still firm, but they should be al dente like pasta. So you want to have them toothsome, which is what that phrase means. I'm going to add a little bit more chicken stock. And now time for the other yummy things. So we'll put in some of our cooked bacon bits. We're going to save a bit to garnish on top. And this will serve to warm them up as well. And we've got some grated Parmesan, so I'm going to put in about 2/3 of the amount that I have there, and again the rest will be a garnish. And we've got some frozen green peas that I've thawed. You can absolutely use fresh peas if it's that season and you have them on hand. Stir all these things in. We're also going to add a big squeeze of fresh lemon. And I'm doing it here just so I can capture the seeds. There we go. And now we're going to do some fresh herbs as well. I really like thyme. And when it's coming from my garden, the stems are so fresh and tender that I can just chop it, stems and all, and put that in. And we'll save the parsley as our final garnish. So I'm just going to put the lid back on for 1 minute to let the peas finish thawing and warming, and then our risotto will be ready to go. All right, our peas should be perfect by now, so we're going to take the lid off again. And in fact, we can turn the burner off now. So our final add-ins are going to be On top, for the most part, we've got our parsley. There we go. And we're going to stir in a little bit of butter, and that just adds to the creaminess that is part of what makes risotto so, so, so delicious. And it'll melt really, really quickly. I can see the cheese in here. Got that beautiful Parmesan melty stuff going on. And as soon as the butter's stirred in, it's time to plate it. And again, a bowl is ideal for risotto because if it's got that soupy texture, you don't want it running off your plate. Okay, a little bit more cheese on top, more of the bacon bits, parsley, a wedge of lemon, and it's ready to go.
Coming up next is a fun dish that packs all the fabulous flavor of fajitas into an easy-to-prepare casserole. You can make it in one large dish or single serving size if you prefer. Feel free to add in any vegetables you have on hand to make it a clean out the fridge meal.
All right, skillet fajitas, so much fun to make and even more fun to eat. So the version I'm going to prepare with you today uses sirloin steak. You could absolutely make this with chicken. It would even be great with pork. You could sub in some black beans instead of meat if you like, but here we go with the steak. So we're going to heat up our pan and add in a little bit of olive oil. And now we're going to cut our steak into thin slivers so they cook quickly. And the sirloin's a great choice because it comes in good sized pieces. And again, this is a dish that would serve 2 people probably as a main course, 4 as party food. And I'm just slicing it into, as I said, thin little pieces so they'll cook quickly. You can pre-cook the meat and continue on with this dish later if that's something that you like to do to speed things up at mealtime. And I'd say bite size is your target, and that means different things to different people, so really just cut it however you like, but the thinness will help with the speed of cooking. All right, so we're going to add this to our pan. Go. You can hear it sizzling already. Now that it's started, we're also going to add our seasonings. So I've got some chili powder, cinnamon, which may surprise you, but it's a hallmark in a lot of Tex-Mex cuisine, and it really plays nicely with the other spices. Oregano, which is probably not a surprise. Some cumin. And some garlic powder. We're going to be adding in fresh garlic, but I really like my fajitas to have a good garlic kick. So I'll let that carry on, and now we're going to get some peppers and onions ready. I like these nice red onions for this, but you could use Spanish onion, sweet onion, regular yellow cooking onion, really whatever you like. I think that's probably the right amount. So in that goes. And with the pepper, we're going to slice it and then cut the slices in half so that they are also bite-sized like the steak. You just don't want this to be tricky for people to eat, especially if it's in a dish on their laps and they're screaming at a football game on TV or something. That's good for the pepper. Add that in. And we've got 1 clove of minced garlic here, so put that in as well. Okay, so the steak is almost completely seared. I can see a few bits that need to make contact with the bottom of the pan. There we go. And now we're going to add some braising liquid. It's a very short braise. Typically a braise is a long, slow process in the oven or on the stovetop, but this one's going to be quick. And I like to add beer as the braising liquid. You could absolutely do water. You could do your favorite de-alcoholized beer. There's some really great craft beers out there that are non-alcohol. And about half of this can is what I need for this. And that will just really help to tenderize everything. Okay, we're going to turn that up a little and let it do its thing. So now we'll talk about toppings and garnishes. So when this is fully simmered, we're going to drain off some of the liquid and we're going to combine it with our toasted tortillas, and then we're going to put it back in the pan and top with cheese. So that's pretty straightforward. And then when the cheese has melted, and you might need to put a lid on the pan to do that, or you could pop it into the oven for that purpose. Personally, my family actually likes it with the cheese as is, and that's okay too. And then we want to make sure we have some tasty add-ons when you go to serve it. So cilantro's a classic for Tex-Mex food. Some people like to serve the leaves whole, but if you've got folks who aren't huge cilantro fans, they might prefer them chopped up so they can have just a little hit of cilantro at a time. It's one of those herbs that really divides people. And we're also going to have some salsa and sour cream. Let's give this a quick stir. So the steak is fully cooked now, as cooked as it needs to be, and we're just trying to soften the vegetables a little bit. That's our goal. So I think we'll just turn this off for a second. And what we want to do is transfer all of these goodies into our bowl, and we'll scoop out a 1/4 cup of the liquid because we don't want our casserole to be dry, and then we discard the rest. Oh, it smells so good. I'm really smelling the cinnamon right now. Just a few more bits in here. Okay, and I've got a 1/4 cup measure here, so we get the right amount of liquid. See if I can scoop it up in one scoop. There we go. So now we're going to stir in our chips, and yes, they will get softened in this process, but that's okay. Tortillas are normally soft anyway. And we'll just use our tongs to stir it. There we go. And then back into the pan it's going to go. If your pot or your skillet is big enough, you can absolutely take the liquid out and do it carefully around the vegetables and the steak. But I find it easier just to do this maneuver in a bowl, and then there's lots of room for tossing and combining. And then we want to make sure we add in the liquid that's accumulated, because that's the whole point of having it in there. Okay. All right, so we're going to put it back on the heat just to make sure it's nice and hot. And we've got our grated, I have a Tex-Mex blend here, so it's some pepper jack, some cheddar, I think a bit of mozzarella as well. And as I mentioned, you can leave it on the heat long enough to let the cheese melt, or if your people are like my people, it's ready to serve. So I'm going to put a little bit of the cilantro on top now, just because it's a nice pop of color. And I'm going to cut some lime wedges because that's a really great accompaniment to this dish as well. And one last tip, you can portion it out into individual serving dishes if you like, if you don't want people to be eating from the communal skillet like this. So we've got our toppings. And we'll put our skillet down. And our Tex-Mex fajita dip or entree, whatever you like, is ready to be enjoyed. Once you start thinking about it, I bet you'll find many of your favorite recipes are easily adapted to one-pan preparation. And if you need some inspiration to get you started, I highly recommend this delicious skillet fajita casserole, my tasty oven-baked bacon and pea risotto, and of course this scrumptious salmon and roasted vegetables. Bon appetit!